are now listening to Rants, Real Answers to Narcissistic Teachings on Spirituality with Dr. J.D. Mills.
All right. Well, here we are. Joshua Mills signing in. With a new podcast called Rants. So this is my first rant, if anything I should say. I'm super excited about this opportunity to be able to come before you guys in a different light, in a different ability, via podcasting. So I'm very excited about it, the opportunity. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, I guess, which I think is a great opportunity to bring before you guys, is communication. Oh man, communication. And I guess I titled it The Lost Art of Communication. It's like I'm finding out the more as you go on in life, you begin to grow and begin to expand in your communication abilities. But one of the things I was thinking about even today with speaking, I was on the Clubhouse. And if you're not familiar with Clubhouse, listen, you need to get on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is pretty dope. But while on Clubhouse, I ended up going into this room and it was talking about the relation between men and women, in particular the African American community. That's what they were speaking about. But what got me was the issue, or the title of the room was why are we enemies? And so I was listening in, but now I'm getting a phone call, so I couldn't continue in the conversation. But I thought the conversation was very interesting. The little bit that I heard, the perspective. And one of the things that I said to add to the conversation was the first thing that came to my mind was, I feel like a lot of times when it comes down to people, in this particular conversation we were talking about men and women, but people and the way that we communicate and how we communicate with one another, a lot of times we're communicating in a way to just come in and convey a message. But it's not necessarily that we're going into that situation or their interaction with the person to actually understand. It's kind of far in between that we actually engage in our minds that I'm going into this particular conversation or interaction with this person to understand this person. We typically only go into an interaction to convey something to someone in the manner of how we feel or what we want to express in that moment. The problem with that is I see a lot of loss, people getting lost in that translation, misunderstandings. We get lost in lost in the sauce, right? We get lost in that space because the set track in our mind is, I have a message that I want to convey to you. But a lot of times we don't even go into the situation seeing if the person that we're talking with, if they're in the right space, the right mind, the right moment to even receive the message that we're trying to convey to them. So what happens is we kind of typically shoot ourselves in the foot, right? Especially in relationships between a male and woman. There's a loss in translation somewhere in the space of expression from the words that I'm using versus how the person is receiving the words. And in that space, what tends to happen is there's emotion, right? kind of interesting because I was talking to my lady, Natasha, and we were talking. And as we were talking about just different words in our practice of our relationship. And when there's something going on, I'll say something. I'll be like, "Oh, that's problematic." And it's funny now, but when I first started saying that to her, she heard it completely different, right? And it was just like, that's a problem. The fact that I said it's problematic is the problem, right? But for her, what I didn't connect to was the connection she had with the terminology problematic. And it's like that in life. In life, we only think about where we are and what we want to say or what we want to convey or what we want to reveal to people, but we don't take in consideration who we're speaking to, the audience that we're speaking to, and where they are. And then not only that, but their association of words, right? There's times that I do teachings and different things in the school, or maybe I'm invited to come in to speak somewhere or something. And when I'm in those spaces, I'm always watching the room. I watch the room to see how to engage the room. So I'm trying to engage the room based upon what I'm sensing intuitively, the body language, right? Are they laughing? Are they smiling? Are they frowning? All these different things. But a lot of times in relationships, we don't meet our spouses or our significant others with that same level of careful, detail-oriented examination. We only want to convey the message. And when we do that, we're at the mercy of where this person is. And what happens is, if that person's going through whatever they're going through, or say in a situation where you're just meeting somebody, right? You're talking to them. They only have their own interpretation or their connection to the words they understand as it relates to the vocabulary that they have, right? The vernacular that they're using. And so I've come to find out, you guys, that what one thing means to me can mean something completely different to another person, just based upon the emotion or the connection to that word, the interest of that word, the space and the position of how they first received that word. And that space of them flowing within that can cause there to be a complete misunderstanding. And if you're not careful, that could look like, man, maybe this ain't right, or maybe this ain't the right connection I need to be with. Whether it be in business, whether it be in platonic relationship, friendship, or whether it even be in the relationship between a pastor and a congregant, or two congregates come together, or just a complete stranger that you meet in the street. And I think a lot of times in America in particular, we lead in our lives, how we live our lives, we lead with the concept of looking at a person in a space of kind of predetermined judgment based upon how we sense the moment. And we go to that person, or we try to interact with that person based upon us and not them. And I think that that's something that's very interesting. I think it's something that we should consider. I think it's something that we should look into. And I think that if we practice entering into a conversation with someone with the mindset that I'm coming into this conversation to understand you, not necessarily to just convey a message to you, but I want to receive a message from you, because it's a dialogue. It's not just a monologue. It's not like I'm doing a podcast like I'm doing right now, right? In every conversation I'm having. So it's not about me just having a whole monologue, but it's about me engaging that person that I'm conveying a message to, because the message that I have that I'm trying to convey to them is important to me. But also what should be important to me as well is the art of hearing that person. The art of receiving what it is they're trying to convey to me. You know, I really thought deep about this particular podcast and what I wanted to talk about here. And when I was thinking about it, I thought back on to kind of ancient times and the interaction between humans, right? Depending on whatever the belief system is or whatever, we all know that by history, based upon the culture of where you come from and what continent you're on, there was certain linguistics and languages and different things, and a lot of diversity that was going on during the time of the beginning, early centuries of the earth that we can start counting on, right? So I was thinking back on it, like, how did we get to where we are now in communicating? And I'm going to tell you something else. What got me was I was watching one of my mentors. My mentors invited me to come into a meeting with him. It was a business meeting they were having. And he said, I just want you to come in here and listen. Just listen to us talk. And as you're listening to us talk, I want you to pay attention to how we communicate with each other. And I said, okay, so I'm listening. And I'm watching them communicate. And for the first time in my life, I witnessed a type of communication that wasn't necessarily on the topic of the issue at hand, if I use that terminology. But the way that they were communicating with each other, they were communicating and talking about who they were as individuals to relay it to the person that they were now trying to build a relationship, a business relationship with. But the way that they were doing it, they weren't doing it in the space of saying, well, this is how I do business and this is how I do things. But what they were doing instead, they were telling their war stories. They were telling them about how they interacted with the people and how some of the deals that they've done through life, and then even down to how they were brought up and growing up as children and their interactions as young men. And I watched this whole exchange go on, and they never once said anything about the business, but they were communicating on a level that both of them understood. And the whole point was, this is who I am in business. This is who you are in business. And based upon this, we can work together and get some things accomplished. It was amazing. My mind was literally blown. It was like I was watching a movie, like watching, The Godfather or something, and how they interacted with each other. But it was just amazing just watching this exchange go on. And so it got me to thinking about the earlier years in creation or in time, and how did they convey messages with each other? How did they exchange this communication? And what it got me to looking at was, it was body language. The first form of communication, of linguistics, has never been by necessarily our words, because before there were words, there were actions. There were things that the body motion, it was things that they begin to do and how they live their lives. So you could see love and understood that it was love because it was being shown forth. And I think in life, we forget that. We forget that nowadays. We forget that the most important language or message that we send to people is what we do with our actions, how we live in that space and in that regard. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned, that if we go back to that space of coming in, especially when you would have, say, an emissary going into a new territory who did not understand the language of the culture or the territory that they were in. And so what ended up happening was they had to study. They had to be very astute in how they were paying attention on what they were paying attention to as related to the interaction with each other. And so because of that, they were able to understand that when this person made this tone with their mouths, they were motioning for something to drink, or they were motioning for something to eat, or they were motioning for sleep. And so it was in that space, and I know that sounds maybe simple to a lot of people, but in that space, you have these earlier notions of translations that begin to take place. So you have this notion of a translator, this new idea of a translator being put on the scene, because now they're in a space and a realm where they're studying the movements, the patterns of people, and it helped them to communicate and to relay the message that they were coming into that region to relay, right? And I think if we learn to do that and go back to that space of coming into an interaction with someone, not just to convey something, not just to say something, to make an announcement for, but to actually understand something, it empowers us. You know, I was talking to one of my brothers, and I was telling him, I said, you know, vulnerability and humility is not weakness. It's the place of understanding who you are and what you are, and confidence in that. Because you are confident, you can be confident enough to respect yourself and to respect the other person that you're standing across from or sitting across from. So in that space, humility is controlled strength, it's controlled knowledge, it's controlled ability. Instead of being loud and being boastful and just trying to convey my message, if I go into the situation with humbleness, vulnerability, that it doesn't show weakness, but it actually shows strength and wisdom, that it empowers me and it empowers the other person. You know, I've had the amazing opportunity to have so many mentors that has poured into me throughout the years. Like, God has blessed me that way, right? I've had the opportunity to sit in rooms and just be illuminated by the conversation that was going on in the room, just like being a fly on the wall. And I'm so grateful for that. But in the midst of that, some of the greatest men, greatest women that I've ever met that impacted my life the greatest are the ones who knew who they were. And because they knew who they were willing to cause everyone in the room, through their practice of humility, in confidence, bring everyone in the room up to another place. That's fascinating. Just think about that. To think that you can be that impactful, to go into a space, to go into a room, to go into a moment, and literally change the outcome or change the space and the position of how people feel or how people see themselves and see a situation, just by you walking in the space of humility and causing everyone in the room, because you're looking for how to impact or empower everyone in the room, that everyone in the room is impacted and has evolved to another place just because of your presence. Fascinating. I mean, and I'm just so blessed to know the people I know and to have the interactions that I've had with these people, because it's always sharpened me. It's always put me in a place that I was able to see something and live out something that the ordinary person, just random human being, would not have the option or the opportunity to interact with. And the reason why I was in those spaces is because of my humility. My humility allowed me to be in the space, to be able to hear and to pay attention and to witness greatness in action. Because truly greatness is not about you as the individual. It's about your ability to be great, but also cause the others around you to be great as well, because they've been impacted by you. They've interacted with you just by knowing you. And it was because of these things in my life and in my interaction in growing up, seeing these type of transactions go on is the reason why I finally got to the place to realize my greatest passion. And my greatest passion in life is to empower other people with my voice. I realized God has given me an ability to use my words to shape a world for people. To be in a place, in a position where I can say one or two phrases that can impact a person so greatly and emotionally that shapes their entire world, either for the good or the bad. And that was a lot of responsibility when I thought about that. When I look back at that, I was like, man, that's a heavy responsibility. It's a right. It's an awesome opportunity. But I felt the weight of it, that I could not just be using my ability and my words for frivolousness, but I need to use it intentionally to be impactful. This is the legacy I want to live. I want to leave, and I want to live, and I want to lead, right? To be at, because even my children, I'm looking at my words, man. I'm looking at my communication, what I'm saying to them. Even today, I talked to my daughters today, and they were just talking to me. They're little, man. They're like in first grade in kindergarten, you know, and I'm just talking to them, and they're talking to me. My daughters, those of you who have daughters, y'all know the daughters can talk, man. They will talk your head off. But when I'm talking to them, I'm just fascinated at how well they communicate, and and I'm asking myself in my mind while they're talking, like, when did you guys start communicating this proper and this strongly and so impactfully and intentionally with your words? Like, how did you get to this place? But I realize I'm living my life in front of them in a way that I'm careful with my words, and I understand the weight that my words carry. So I'm teaching them that same thing right now, because your words can be either life or death, and they can either open a door or close a door. They can either cause advancement or cause stagnation. Your words, your ability as an individual, you've been made in the image and likeness of God, and the same ability to speak life and create something out of nothing has been given to you, just like your Creator. That's a massive responsibility. So my question to myself every day is, what am I building with my words? Who am I building? Who am I uplifting? Am I challenging them to grow, to see things in a different perspective by speaking life to them? Or am I just adding to the narrative of ignorance by adding frivolous, unnecessary stuff to them through conversation? Listen, I don't want to waste my words no more. And the second thing is I don't want to go into a situation thinking I know what's needed in this situation without being humble enough to read the room, to be sensitive to the moment that I'm in with the individuals that I'm in that room with, that I can impact their lives. Man, can you believe that you have that ability within you, and that every one of us have that same responsibility, that we can change a whole nation or a whole culture by what we say out of our mouths, by us being intentional with even the words that we're using, understanding the definition of the phrases and the spells that we're putting together as we're spelling certain words, and the etymology of what comes behind what I'm saying, or what emotion invokes, or my words invoke for other people. Am I invoking emotions of happiness and joy and peace, or I'm causing anxiety and fear and anger and envy? What am I doing with my words? That's an amazing ability. And guess what? We all have that ability that's been given to us. My question to us, what are we going to do with it? Are we intentional in our communication and the words that we're using to make sure that no matter what situation we're in, we're willing to uplift, to pick people up with our words, to dust them off, to bring out the greatest in them, the blessedness in them, the most awesome portion of them? Or am I adding to their trauma? Am I adding to their wounds? Or am I adding to the negative or the base level of who they are as an individual with my words? There's a particular proverb that is spoken that says, life and death is in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat the fruit of it. So what that means is we got a choice. We could either choose life or we could choose death. I'd rather choose life. What are you going to choose? That's all I got for you guys tonight. Man, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Subscribe to Rants with Dr. J.D. Mills, Joshua Mills. I'm so excited to have this opportunity and this platform to share my innermost thoughts. Those of you who follow me already on Facebook, you guys already know that I kind of from time to time do something called Along the Way, where it's just me video logging and I'm just talking, and I'm driving in my car and I'm talking. But this gives me a more stable platform, and so I'm enlisting each and every one of you to partner with me. Help me get the word out on these podcasts. Let's do something big. Let's impact some people's lives. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Till next time. Peace.